Alien Legion was a precursor to all of these things. This story was originally written in the late 70s. Think of G.I. Joe in space. It had a format, it had a superior quality format, and its pages were much thicker than a normal comic book page. You got more pages per comic, and of those pages that you got, none of them were ads. The only ad that you would find in the entire book would be on the back cover page, and that would be an advertisement for another epic comic. So you can find these stories in a collection, but you're not going to be paying much more for the actual comic books, if you can find them, than you would be paying for the Omnibus. There is an Omnibus put out by Dark Horse Comics, which was supposed to reboot the franchise, but that never happened. Volume 1 has a very Star Wars feel. Volume 2 has a very Star Trek feel.
Shut up and get to the point!
Alien Legion was a comic put out by Marvel, but it was put out by an imprint of Marvel called Epic Comics, which was around in the 80s and the 90s. And to explain Alien Legion, I have to explain a little bit about Epic Comics, because Epic Comics and its format really influenced what Alien Legion was.
Hell, it's about time.
It was where Marvel did things that were basically non-superhero comics.
What?
Basically, Marvel knew which side of its bread was buttered. It knew that it was a superhero comic publisher. It knew that superhero comics were where they got their money from. It seemed that Epic Comics was where Marvel published stories that would probably be better published in other formats besides a comic book. Now, a lot of people would see Epic Comics as Marvel's version of Vertigo, but it's much more than that, because Vertigo focused almost entirely on mystical storylines where they didn't do a lot of superhero comics. They did a lot of other different things. There were things like the fantasy story of ElfQuest, which was sort of cartoonish, but it was in a fantasy world, and it followed a party of elves. They could have been done much better, I think, as a cartoon. And there was also things like Gru, which again was in a fantasy world. It was very, very cartoonish, and it was basically a cartoon take upon Conan the Barbarian. They had books like Video Jack, which had a British comic feel. There were a lot of historical fiction books, some of them written by Chris Claremont. Chris Claremont wrote The Black Dragon. He also wrote Miranda, the She-Wolf. There were some superhero things done in there. These are the first books that published Mobius's work. Again, before he was Mobius, because the first books that he published were with Epic Comics called Mobius. But he also published through them his 2-issue miniseries of The Silver Surfer, John Byrne's The Last Galactus story. Also, other kinds of superhero books like the ultra-violent, ultra-anti-hero story of martial law. Now, when we talk about martial law, that goes right into something else about Epic Comics. Epic Comics did not follow the comic code. It was Marvel's place where they put books which didn't have to follow the comic code. But that being said, with Alien Legion was a book that looked like it followed the comic code. There was nothing in it that would suggest that they didn't follow the comic code, even to the point where there's really no cursing in it. And Alien Legion, in its format, looks like a movie, looks like a television show. It doesn't look, a lot of the time, like it's built for a comic book. It looks like it's built for the screen. It uses not so much tropes, but visual things that you would see in movies and see in television. Things like how you would hack into a computer. There's a visual of that you would normally see in a movie or a television show. You would have panels that would show that here in Alien Legion. You also had sort of the way that explosives were used, the way that a grenade would fall. It would look like something you would see in Die Hard. You had a Star Wars aesthetic for the look of the book, and the Alien Legion looks like a band of stormtroopers. And this was long before anything like that ever came out of the Star Wars universe.
Captain Kaibo! Someone's attacking us!
That should teach them a lesson.
1984 through 1987, all there was for the Star Wars universe was the movies and a couple of comic books. But this is what this book looks and feels like. You're following a group of stormtroopers. That's what the Alien Legion is. And in book 3, it looks like you're on Mos Eisley.
Shut up and get to the point!
So, the universe that Alien Legion is in looks a lot like the Trade Federation in the prequels for Star Wars. You have 2 different galaxies who discovered each other and started the Trade Federation. And basically they took over their respective galaxies, and then they discovered another galaxy which they brought into their Trade Federation. So in this universe where they have this 3-galaxy Trade Federation, the 3-galaxy Trade Federation controls everything. They are basically the government. And they're not exactly the most benevolent government that there is. There's things like slavery. and no one seems to bat an eye at it.
What the fuck?
So the Trade Federation needs a military in order to keep control, and that military is the Alien Legion. And the Alien Legion does things like quash rebellions. There is a storyline where this world doesn't want to be part of the Trade Federation because if they are, their people are going to be drafted into the military, and they're a world of pacifists. But the Alien Legion comes in and just destroys the rebellion, because that's what the military does for this storyline. The squad that you follow in this book is called Squad Nomad. And Squad Nomad ends up being the place where the military shoves the worst of the worst. The people that they don't really want in their military, but they'll take them anyways. Thieves and cowards and things like that. That's what it ends up becoming. They call themselves the worst of the worst, but that's not how it begins in Volume 1. So to give you a little view of what the Alien Legion is actually structured like, it's supposed to be the French Foreign Legion in space. That's basically what it is. And if you don't know what the French Foreign Legion is, it's just a part of the French army where foreigners can actually serve in the French army. So you have a lot of different kinds of people in the French Foreign Legion. And in the Alien Legion, you have a whole bunch of different kinds of races. That's what the Alien Legion is made up of. So I'm going to go over basically the core members of Squad Nomad. And I know I'm going to pronounce their names wrong. I don't know if there's actually a way to pronounce their names. They haven't really come up with that yet, I suppose, until they get the movie going. First of all, you have the captain, which is Captain Sirgar. So this squad, it looks like a Dungeons & Dragons party. It kind of does. Besides all the other descriptions I've given of it, it kind of looks like somebody put it together with a 2nd edition D&D monster manual, trying to figure out what their party looks like. So I'm going to give you a lot of references here. So Captain Sirgar, he looks like a cross between a dark elf and a Yuan-Ti. His top half looks like a dark elf, and he has a snake tail. His entire bottom half is a snake tail. And it's a really, really good aesthetic for a character. He is very much in the vein of Wolverine in that way. So he is a military man. He runs the squad. He has an impeccable record. He is very dedicated to the Legion Code of Honor, even so much as he will get himself into trouble to protect that code over and above following orders sometimes, which happens in the first couple of issues. Then you have his second in command, who is Lieutenant Montrock, who is a humanoid. He's a well-educated rich kid, and his father stuck him in the military basically to make a man out of him. Then you have Zerod, who basically is a kobold. He was an ex-general of Union Regulars, and the Union Regulars were basically a regional planetary force, and he resigned his commission in that so that he could just be a soldier again. You have Miko, who reminds me a lot of a Mind Flayer. He has this pinkish skin. He doesn't have the tentacles coming out of his face, but he's the medic of the group, and he's a low-level Esper. You have Dunn, which is another humanoid, and he is basically a human fighter. He is a little bit an engineer in this as well, but he reminds me of someone trying to take Sergeant Rock and put him into space. He's a little less moral than Sergeant Rock, but he looks like Sergeant Rock. You have Grimrod, who looks kind of like a half-elf. He's the smuggler, gambler, thief of the party. You have Dirge, who looks like an Umbra Hulk. They call him the Tank, and he basically is the one that goes in and takes all the hits. You have Meskad, who is a half-ogre, and you have Tamara, who looks like a half-elf. And she is basically not Lady J, but the Scarlet from G.I. Joe. She is Scarlet of this company. She's acrobatic, and she's the new person in the group. She doesn't actually come into the stories until about halfway through the series. I think she's the only woman in the squad. I'm not entirely sure if she's the only female in the squad because, of course, you're dealing with aliens, so there's all that. All right, so those are your basic members of Squad Nomad, but you have a bunch of other characters as well, which are characters that die, characters that, are just grunt soldiers that come in and out. And you follow this party of soldiers through their, well, not so much adventures, but through their orders of what they're given. Now, to get a little bit into the story here, just very, very lightly into the story, it's well told. The story is done very, very well, just because it starts off, and at the first they have usually a main story and then a smaller story at the back, and each of these stories will focus on one of these characters, give you their background and why they're in the Legion, all these kinds of things, and it will give you that story about that person in relation to them fulfilling a mission. They have a mission every issue. And for the first couple of issues, it just seems like they're throwaway missions. They're not really anything that connect together right away. But as you get into about issue 3, you realize that there is a part of this mission that is connected to a larger story. But it would probably work better as a movie or a television show. And the great thing about that is that if you look on IMDb right now, you will see that Alien Legion is supposed to become a movie sometime in the near future. So you may be looking this book up anyways when this movie comes out. Now, again, I don't know if this movie that's supposed to come out is going to be part of the Marvel Universe or not. It may be the next big Marvel space movie. it may be its own independent space movie. I'm not entirely sure. Either way, I think it's going to be great once they actually put it on the screen, because if it's part of the Marvel Universe, it's going to fit in well with what they already have going for their space set movies. But if they put it in its own universe, it's going to be something that Star Wars fans will most probably love to see.